Okay, so we're live at the Shofar blowing workshop of the Kitchener-Waterloo community, 5/7, almost 81, 2020. A very historic time, no question, no doubt. I'd like to believe this is the first time any of us have ever felt the need in any way, shape, or form to learn how to blow the shofar. There's usually somebody very talented that we can rely on. And for those of us that won't be able to make it to shul this year, we are now all becoming rabbis and shofar blowers, and we have to do everything. You also have to be the guy in the back who says, you didn't do it good. So you're going to have to fill all those roles at home this Rosh Hashanah. So there's a few items of business we have to go through. First and foremost, we have to learn a little bit of technique. It's not the most obvious skill to blow the shofar. It does need a little bit of instruction and practice. I'm very happy that the shofars arrived when they did. I was worried they would arrive a day before Rosh Hashanah. So you do have a few days to practice. And if you have children at home and you like to get them out of bed, the shofar is a great tool to do so. So we're going to talk a little bit about the technical side of blowing the shofar. Then we'll move into a little bit of the halachic side, some of the rules and regulations of how the shofar must be blown, in what order, and what sound, and so on. And then finally, a little bit of inspiration. There's obviously tremendous amount of meaning. The shofar carries tremendous meaning and significance, metaphorical meaning, spiritual meaning, and so on, and moral meaning that we can touch on a little bit. We won't go through everything. Obviously, it's impossible to cover everything. It's really an ocean of content just on the meaning of the shofar. So with that being said, does everybody have the shofar with them? You've got your shofar with you? Okay. So this is the shofar I'm going to be using. It's a little bit different than what you've got. This one, for those of you who are not familiar, this is my Zeta Moshe's shofar, who I'm named for. My great-grandfather, may rest in peace, who came to America from Hungary in the early 1900s, brought this with him from Hungary. So this is over 100 years old. I inherited it 2 years ago. I never knew it existed. And my grandmother gave it to me because she said, you're the first one named Moshe, you should take it. So it's very special to me, and this is what I'll be using. I hope it works. The technique of blowing the shofar is actually pretty straightforward. So a couple of pointers on the technique. Number one, what not to do. So what you're not going to do is blow air, like so. That won't get you anywhere. Case in point, you can try now, just blowing air into your shofar. Probably won't make a sound. If it does, you're very lucky. But just to blow air is not what's going to do the trick. Another bit of technical information is that the shofar is not blown from the front of the mouth. The shofar is blown from the corner of the mouth, the right corner, right at the very end of your mouth, right there, where your lips end, is where you're going to kind of nudge and squeeze the shofar into a very, very tight little spot. The way to get the sound of the shofar out is very simply by fluttering your lips, like that. That plus the proper placement, those two, the combination of the proper placement of the shofar plus the fluttering of your lips, forcing air out through your lips so that it creates that kind of sound, will have you blowing shofar no problem. So case in point, if I do like this, I have nothing. This better work. If I do this, I have the sound of the shofar. So I'd like you all to take a moment to try, just get yourselves familiar. First of all, without the shofar, leave the shofar to the side. Try to get all of your lips closed and get a little tiny opening in the corner of your mouth to make that sound. Okay, you can go ahead, try that. If you need to, many people find it helpful to put a finger over the lips to keep the lips closed while they're trying to get that little corner of the lips open. Like that. So you want to keep the entire mouth sealed. No air should escape the rest of your lips. And by doing out of the very corner of your lips, you're already halfway there. And if you can just get used to doing that, so it's not a regular puff of air, it's a little fluttering of the lips, squeezing air out through lips that are almost entirely sealed, so that sound comes out. And then once you have that down, all you really need to do is get the mouthpiece of the shofar to match up, to meet the hole in your lips. The opening in your lips should match up with the hole of the shofar. And it should be pretty straightforward. Ideally, you're not straining too much to get a sound out. When it's done right, it shouldn't be that much strain. It's a little bit of strain, especially if you're doing the whole routine of the shofar, but it should not leave you gasping for air every blow. You want to try? You can get a sound out.
I can wear like a blanket.
Take a lot of practice.
Look at the camera.
So if you're hearing the air pass through, that means that your lips are open too wide. You have to close your lips a bit more so that the air is coming out like that.
How do you close your lips?
Keep trying. I want to hear some sounds before we move on.
Is it like blowing a trumpet? The lips are like we're blowing a trumpet.
It's similar to a trumpet on the side. Oh, that was a good sound. There we go. There we go. That's the beginning of the shofar sounds. We're getting there. Good. Good. Yes, that's it. That's it. That's it. That's the essence of it. It's a question now of just of practice and technique, but that's the essence of what you need to do. There needs to be almost a hermetical seal between your lips and the shofar. The air can't escape to the sides. Otherwise, you're losing that air. It's not going to go. It's got to go in. Sometimes, depending on how your shofar is, every shofar is unique, right? There's no two shofars are alike. Depending on the actual mouthpiece, some mouthpieces are more oval. As you can see, this one here is very much an oval, and some are more circular. So it may be that for the shape, and also everybody's lips are different, right? We're all unique. It may be that the combination of your unique shofar and your unique lips requires you to hold the shofar at one angle or another. So you can go hold it like this. You can adjust it a little bit until it fits properly, the best seal that you can possibly get between your lips and the shofar. So feel free to kind of rotate. Oh, that was a good one. Rotate it around until you find a good spot where it's a good match between the opening of the shofar and your lips. You see, for me, if I hold it vertically, like this, I get a very weak sound. If I hold it more horizontally, I get a much better. That was pretty good. Was that Diana? All right. Now that I think you all understand, at least conceptually, you understand the idea that we're trying to get across. Seal your lips, use a finger if necessary, flutter them, push the air out so it makes that kind of sound, and put the shofar right there, angle it as necessary. That's just for getting the sound out. Now there's going to be, on the technical side, you need to know how to make a few different sounds. So the easiest way to do that, there's a few different ways. You can do puffs of air each time. For everyone that you need to do, that's incredibly draining. I don't recommend that. It's valid, it's okay, but it's gonna knock you out. A better way of doing it is to break up the breaths whenever you're gonna have. We'll talk about it soon, but there's going to be various types of sounds that you need to get out of the shofar in terms of the length of the blast. One is the tekiah is a very long blast, and then there's shorter blasts. To make a blast shorter, instead of blowing shorter each time, you keep blowing that one breath, but you use your tongue to break it up. So for example, those breaks in the sounds were done entirely with my tongue. It was one breath. It was one breath, and it was broken up with my tongue pressing against that opening on the side. So if you don't press your tongue on the opening of your mouth, you can also do it by doing la 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 la, because your tongue is still going to create a break in the airflow. It's not going to be as clean and as sharp as if you actually put your tongue over the opening of your mouth in the corner. So that's probably the cleanest, nicest way to get those blasts, one long exhale, one long blow, broken up with your tongue on the opening of your mouth. Plan B, if that's difficult, is just to do la 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 la, and that will also break up the airflow, although it won't be as, you'll still have some air going through between each blast, but it's okay. So if you'd like, we can practice that. So again, try to put the shofar to your lips, adjust and wiggle it as necessary. And let's try for plan A. Let's try to get you guys to place your tongue over the opening of your mouth and just you don't have to do it so fast. You can do it at a slower pace just to get used to the technique. And just, put your tongue there, take it away. Tongue on, tongue off, again and again and again, like your tongue is tapping. Your tongue is going to be tapping basically on the opening of your mouth right at the shofar's edge to get those blasts. See if you can try. You're all on mute. That's why I don't hear anything. Okay, I suppose that if you tell me if it's working or not, because right now I have zero feedback from you guys. You're all on mute. So is that working? Are you getting those broken up sounds? There you go. That's it. Now you just have to it's all a question of practice. If you understand the technique, getting it clean and smooth and clear is just practice. That I can't do for you in a moment. That's the essence of it. That's the essence. Okay. Good. Okay. If you'd like to take notes on this, I encourage you to take notes. I do have a handout to share with you. I posted it in the chat here. I'll post it again in case people came in afterwards and didn't see it. Here we go. If you can please click on the link that I just posted, that will open up the handout that I want to reference with you now. For those watching online, for those watching the recording, what should we do with this? How are we going to get you this file? Let's see. Oh, I know what we'll do. For those watching this recording, if you go to jewishwaterloo.com/shofarkw, we'll just make it that. jewishwaterloo.com/shofarkw. This file will be there for you to be able to download. So the file does everybody have it open? Can you give me a thumbs up if you see this file? You got it? Okay, good. I'm assuming those of you with cameras off also got it. Fantastic. So let's walk through some of the halachos, some of the rules and regulations of blowing shofar properly. This is the extremely condensed nutshell version of what you absolutely need to know. So what I've eliminated is Talmudic debate, rationale for how we got here. That's a whole class for itself. We really don't have the time and space for that. This is literally the practical end result, what you need to know. Okay? So if you've got questions, we can happily explore that outside of this class another time. But as to how we got there and what each one means, I'm literally delivering to you now what you need to know, practically speaking. So page 1 has a list of halachas. Page 2 in this file is the actual, the bracha. There's 2 brachas that you make before blowing the shofar. One is the asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav, the bracha we make before every mitzvah, as well as the bracha of shehechiyanu, anytime we do a mitzvah that is rare. And so we've arrived at this day where Hashem kept us alive, which has extra meaning in this time. And we say the shehechiyanu, and then you have the list of blasts. We'll go through all that in a moment. Okay. So if you're blowing shofar at home, for your family, here's what you need to know. Number 1, when you recite the blessings, you want to have in mind, think to yourself that you're including everybody with you. You're saying the blessing on their behalf. It's a very simple thing. Just remember, you're the leader, and you're helping other people fulfill their obligation. Have whoever's in the room, just have them in mind and think to yourself, I'm doing this on their behalf, that they should fulfill the mitzvah as well. Number 2, let's go through what you actually need to blow. So, number 1, there's the tekiah. Tekiah is a long blast, short, smooth blast. That's a tekiah. Straight and simple. No monkey business, no ups and downs, just a straight blast. And it should be about 5 seconds long. Okay? There are, again, part of how I saved you a lot of drama here is that in different sets of the shofar blowings, the tekiah has to have a minimum. There's different minimum lengths. But if you do 5 seconds, you're always going to be okay for the minimum length. So just go with that, as the tekiah should be a 5-second blast. You can time yourself so you get a hang for it, or if you're good with an internal clock, that's fine. You can just count to yourself. That was 5 seconds, in my head at least. Okay, that's the tekiah. Tekiah is 5 seconds long. There is no maximum. If you want to show off, you can do a 20-second tekiah every time. Obviously, that makes the entire segment, all the rest of the shofar blowing, a lot longer. But usually in the shul, it's anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, and 5 is the minimum. So if you do 5 seconds each, you're fine. Next, we have the shivarim. Shivarim literally means broken. It's meant to resemble someone sobbing or wailing. Actually wailing, and then the next one is sobbing. And so the shivarim are 3 medium blasts, and each one should be around a half a second to 1 second, not longer. Okay, they should not be long. Something like that. So it's really barely a second long each time, if that. Right? So it's not very, very short, but it should not be longer than 1 second. And you do 3 of those. Every time there's a shivarim, it's 3 of those blasts. 2, 2. Yeah. Okay. Lastly, the teruah, which is meant to resemble somebody sobbing. And that's at least 9 short staccato blasts, like this. That's what we were doing before. So that was way more than 9. And that's going to be at least 9 each time. And you can do more. There's no maximum, but at least 9. So now we have the definitions. There's tekiah, the long one, shivarim, the 3 not too long ones, and then teruah, at least 9 really, really short ones, just a blip of a shofar blow. Then you're going to be blowing them in 3 different segments, 3 different combinations of how these sounds are grouped. Again, how and why we get to that grouping is a whole nother discussion in the Talmud, not for now. What you need to know is there's 3 different groupings. One is called tashrat. Tashrat is an acronym, tekiah, shivarim, teruah, tekiah. So in Hebrew, if you take the first letters of each one of those words, or in the case of teruah, it's the second letter because it's a resh, whatever, the acronym of the 4 sounds you're blowing ends up making the word, the acronym, tashrat. So that's going to be a tekiah, a shavarim, a teruah, and then a tekiah again. And this is repeated 3 times. So 3 sets of tashrat. Then you pause. You do again. The next segment is tashat, which is tekiah, the long blast, followed by 3 short blasts, the shavarim, and then a tekiah again. And then you do that whole set 3 times as well. And then the last one is tarat, which is tekiah, teruah, and tekiah, so the long blast. We always start with the long blast, and we always end with the long blast. It's whatever's in the middle of the sandwich that changes. Long blast, teruah, at least 9 of those staccato short blips, and then a tekiah again. And once again, this segment is 3 times. Is anybody overwhelmed or confused by what I just said? Should I go through it again? Clear? Okay. Now, that part's not so hard. Here comes the tricky part. Number 4. When you're doing the tashrat, which is the first segment that you'll be blowing, the shavarim and the teruah, the 3 and the 9, cannot be interrupted with a breath. The reason for that is because the reason that we blow both of them is because there's a doubt as to which one it should be, and we're doing both to cover all the bases. So we don't want to have any separation to indicate that they're 2 separate sounds. Essentially, it's one sound, and that's why there should be no breath between the shavarim and the teruah. You just go from the 3 straight into the 9. Another important rule is that after and before, every time you blow a tekiah, whenever it is in the segment, before a tekiah, you must take a breath to pause between the previous sound and the upcoming tekiah. After you've done the tekiah, you take another breath to break the sound between what you just did and what's about to come. So always breathe before and after a tekiah. Never breathe between the shavarim teruah in the first segment. That's it. That's the whole rigmarole of breathing. And the rest is optional. And of course, like many other mitzvahs, we do not interrupt. We're not allowed to talk. No talking from beginning to end. Now let's take a look at page 2. Page 2 will show you what exactly you're going to be doing. So you take the shofar in your hand. Before you put it in your mouth, you recite these 2 brachas here. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kedishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Whoever is in front of you will answer Amen. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'higianu lizman hazeh. Again, whoever is in front of you says Amen. Now, it's very helpful and recommended, although not mandatory. It's not strictly mandatory. It is common practice, it is a Jewish custom, and it's also good common sense to have what we call a makri. Makri means the one who calls out. And in some congregations, they actually verbalize and call out what sound is coming. Other congregations, they just point to show the shofar blower what to blow next. But the bottom line is you have somebody helping you whose job it is simply to keep track of where you're holding and what you need to blow next. Because when you're the one blowing, you're focused on blowing. It's very hard sometimes to remember where am I at? What did I do 2 or 3? You get lost. So designate someone in your family, unless you're all alone, in which case you're on your own and you'll be fine. But if you have at least one other person with you, designate a person. It could be a kid, it could be anybody, to point or to say what's coming next. And this can be done either on the English side or the Hebrew side. You have on the English, it's transliterated as you see here. So either they say tekiah, and then you blow the tekiah. And then they say shavarim teruah. Shavarim teruah, like I said, it's one unit. You see you have that dash there. It's one unit without a breath in between. Shavarim teruah, you do the shavarim teruah. Tekiah, you blow the tekiah again, and so on. Very straightforward. They don't have to do anything fancy. All they have to do is read, and they have to remember where you're up to. And that is basically all you need to know to blow the shofar successfully. And before we move on to the inspiration section, does anybody have any questions? I imagine you might have some questions. We'll take some questions now, and then we'll move on to the meaning of the shofar and so on, the message of the shofar. No questions? Everything makes sense? Okay, fantastic. So, let me tell you a story about how we approach the shofar. Story goes that in the times of the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, who lived about 300 years ago in Ukraine, and he was the founder of the Hasidic movement, he had a student who was going to be designated as the shofar blower in his synagogue for Rosh Hashanah. This fellow's name was Reb Wolf Kitzes. Wolf Kitzes. And before Rosh Hashanah, he approached his great master, the Baal Shem Tov, and he asked if the Baal Shem Tov would agree to teach him some of the deep, profound, Kabbalistic, mystical insights that go along with the blowing of the shofar, so that he can meditate on those concepts as he's blowing for maximum effect. The Baal Shem Tov agreed, and he taught him some of these secrets of the Torah, deep spiritual ideas. And Reb Wolf wrote it down on a piece of paper so you can have it with him in his pocket and remember and blow the shofar in the most optimal, spiritually perfect way possible. Fine. He's getting ready, he's practicing, he's polishing, everything is great. And finally, the day of Rosh Hashanah arrives, and he's in the shul. The Baal Shem Tov is there. Hundreds of fellow Hasidim and students and the villagers are all there. And it's finally time to blow the shofar. This is the moment that he's been waiting for. He's finally going to knock it out of the park with the most amazing, rich, rewarding, fantastic, spiritual shofar blowing ever. And he takes the shofar, he goes up to the bima, he's standing there in front of everybody, and he reaches into his pocket to pull out this paper with all the deep mystical intentions. And lo and behold, the paper is gone. And he's standing there on the bima, everybody's waiting for him to start blowing, he starts to sweat, he's in a panic. Where's the paper? What happened? But there's no time. There's nothing you can do. Everybody's waiting for you to blow the shofar. It's Rosh Hashanah. It's showtime. So he had no choice. He couldn't remember the deep ideas that he was taught. All the abstract, Kabbalistic concepts escaped him, eluded him. And with a lot of frustration and regret, he blew the shofar. The technique he knew. Technique was fine. But he was really upset that he didn't have access to these deep Kabbalistic thoughts. After the davening was over, after the service was finished, the Baal Shem Tov came and he said to him, Reb Wolf, Yasher Koyach, thank you. That was the most marvelous shofar blowing I've ever heard. And Reb Wolf looks at the Baal Shem Tov and he says, Rebbe, I didn't have even one of the ideas that you taught me. I couldn't find the paper. I didn't know what to think. It was all for nothing. I didn't have anything. It was nothing special. So the Baal Shem Tov said to him, Wolf, let me tell you something. Every one of those mystical ideas that I taught you represents metaphorically a key to a particular heavenly gate. Each one unlocks and gives you access to another aspect of the divine. But there's a master key. You don't need all the little keys if you have the master key. All the particulars are not necessary if you have the master key to all the heavenly gates. And what is the master key to all the heavenly gates? Which deep Kabbalistic idea is that? He said that is a broken heart. If you're brokenhearted, yearning, and not sitting there content, feeling that I've arrived, I made it, I'm perfect, I'm great, but rather I'm lacking, there's so much I need to do, I'm far from perfect, I have to work so much harder to come closer to God and to be right and to be righteous. That brokenheartedness is the master key that opens up all the heavenly gates. There's no question that this shofar blowing was fantastic, the best ever. So we're all going to be blowing shofar at home, and a lot of the surrounding, the atmosphere, the environment, and so on is not going to be what we're used to. It's going to be very unusual Rosh Hashanah. And if we can capitalize on our disoriented feelings and channel that into brokenheartedness and channel that into yearning for improvement, for personal redemption, and for global redemption, then that is the best intent, the best Kabbalistic idea that we can bring to the shofar blowing. That's one idea. Number two, Maimonides writes about the shofar that really we have no idea why we blow the shofar. The shofar is one of those things where God said and we say okay. Like a number of mitzvahs in the Torah which don't have a logical reason associated with it. It's just God's command and we say yes, sir. However, Maimonides writes that there is still, despite that, there is a sort of an allusion with an A, not an I, an allusion to the idea of waking up from your slumber. What kind of slumber are we in? So the Rebbe's father-in-law once spoke that a person can be, just like you have people who sleepwalk. I don't know if any of you have anybody in your family who are sleepwalkers, but just like somebody could be a sleepwalker, you could also be somebody who is a sleep davener. You can keep kosher while asleep. You can keep Shabbat while asleep. And whatever Jewish practice that you do can be done while asleep spiritually. And so the shofar is coming to wake us up, and that we should not be going about our lives in a state of slumber, metaphorically, spiritually, but to be aware, to be engaged, to be present, to be intentional, to be focused, and not to do things by rote, not to do things by routine, and to really do things with all our heart and soul. To whatever mitzvah we do, it should come from that same brokenheartedness, that same yearning for connection and closeness with God, to identify with our Jewish identity and make that stronger and more prevalent and more present in our lives, and not to be sleepyheads. And the shofar very much, typifies the wake-up call, the bugler, so to speak, the stereotypical bugler in a military camp and so on. This is a loud, piercing sound that wakes us up. And the third idea that I wanted to share with you very briefly is the notion of the shofar, like we mentioned at the beginning, that it's from an animal, and as a result, it doesn't necessarily smell very pleasant. But the idea of us using an animal horn, something that's really spiritually unsophisticated. I mean, rams are not known for their great insight into life. It's an animal. It's not a spiritually sophisticated creature. But yet we're using a part of that animal to celebrate the new year, to mark the new year, and to recommit to God. The idea there is that the shofar comes from a very, very unsophisticated part of us, which is paradoxically the deepest part of us. Sophistication is sometimes, a lot of smoke and mirrors, and it's relatively superficial. I think, if I'm allowed to quote Coco Chanel, she said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, right? I think she said that. And she was probably talking about, an evening dress, but she may as well have been talking about the shofar, because simplicity is really the ultimate sophistication. And the shofar could not be more simple. I mean, really, it is not even a proper instrument. It's not even a nice trumpet. There's nothing sophisticated or genteel or, nice about it. It's really very, very raw, very plain and simple. But because of that, it's a vehicle for us to express the deepest, most simple part of ourselves, the essence of our soul, at which level we have always been connected to God. It's the level of our soul that can never be affected by our behavior. Behavior is only one level of your being as a person. There's a part of you that is not tied to behavior. It's not defined by behavior. And it's from that place that we blow the shofar. From that place, we can rejuvenate ourselves for a whole new year. From that place, we can re-accept God as our personal king, as our master whom we are willing to serve. And it's from that place of innocence and simplicity that we blow the shofar and connect to God and to the whole message of the holiday. And again, these are extreme nutshells. Each one of these points can be elaborated on at length, but bad things happen if you let the rabbi go on at length. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Obviously, there's much more you can explore online. If you go to our website, we have a Rosh Hashanah section, jewishwaterloo.com/Rosh Hashanah. Will take you to a plethora of resources and classes and essays and so on about the content and the meaning of Rosh Hashanah. For further reading and for further study. And that's basically it. The rest is practice. And so I hope that you'll practice successfully. If anybody is having a hard time really getting off the ground, please feel free to reach out to me. Depending on what's going on, I may have some more tips that just aren't broadly relevant, but might be for your specific situation. So if you're having a really hard time after a day of practice and it's just not going anywhere, you're not seeing any improvement, feel free to reach out, send me an email, give me a call, and I'll try my best to help you out. I want to wish you all Shana Tova U'Metuka. Everybody should be inscribed and sealed for a great new year. Only health for everybody, prosperity. You should make double the money this year because we have to catch up from this past year, double the money in the coming year. Lots of Yiddish and nachas from your families. And God willing, we should be able to get together in person soon because Zoom is nice. But as they say in Hebrew, zeh lo zeh. So hopefully soon we'll be able to be together. Any final questions before we wrap it up for the night?
Just thanking you very much for a really good session.
Thank you. My pleasure. I hope it was helpful. I hope you all learned something, and I hope it works, most of all. Okay. Good night, folks. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
See you soon.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All the best.